believer, yeah, you should go be with other believers. You can reinforce each other. It's very edifying, I hear. Symbia says, toilet bowl earth, would Jesus approve of you calling his earth a toilet? Interesting question. Ryler05 says, couldn't get people to believe in sin and sex, so they changed sin to STDs. Yes, yes. In fact, you can find a pretty strong pattern of taking archaic concepts and bringing them back under the guise of science. I would even argue that heliocentrism is a modern iteration of ancient sun worship. But no, if you're a religious person and you're trying to recruit me, just stop. I'm slamming the door in your face. If you're coming in pairs on bikes, I'm putting a stick in the spokes. Like, I am not cool with religious proselytizers, whether you're mainstream media advocates or you're advocating for some religious cult, some archaic mind control system. Like, no thanks. I don't want it. Do you believe in God? Do you believe in Gaia? No. I don't believe in Gaia. I don't believe in Gaia's wrath. I don't even believe that the earth exists. I know the universe exists as we experience it, but I don't know if it exists before we experience it. It exists as a memory after. But as far as the earth as a discrete object suspended in space, I think that's a lie. Joined by We, thank you for joining. Stranger Days, thanks for joining. But whenever somebody asks me, which God do you believe in God? I'm like, okay, I can't take that question seriously. I'm sorry. You need to be more inclusive. I mean, which God? And if we're going to be completely honest, maybe we shouldn't be. Let's change the subject. Because Gaia is the new God to reckon with. Like when I said atheism the other day, or even today, we've been talking about this. I've been talking about the concept of atheism as a methodology for rejecting a premise of a divine authorship, of a divine source, as defined by the other side. So this guy comments and he's like, do you believe in God? Well, he means his God, which is probably a reflection of him. And who knows what he's like? His values, his version of things. And I want to reject that. But mainly here, the God construct is what I'm talking about. I don't believe in his God construct. I can just say that unequivocally. Whatever God construct he was selling, I don't believe it. And I don't believe the mainstream God construct, Gaia. Floating, vulnerable, but also mad at us because we're like a virus. I don't believe in their space, heaven, its utopianism, or even its supposed reality. No, I don't. I think it's all just a utopian scam. And the symbolism reveals it all. Okay, let's see here. Ryler says TBE should call in. Yeah, religious nutcases, religious recruiters are welcome to call in. If you want to call in and try to recruit me to your faith, go for it. But I come from a place of objectivity, and I've done my due diligence. I was raised in a church, and I thought I was a Catholic. I thought Catholics were Christians. And then I was told by the internet that, no, you're not a Christian. I'm like, whoa, I thought I was a Christian my whole life. I didn't know how divided it all was. Okay, phones are open now. 505 349 0420. To be honest, I tried to read the Book of Mormon. I got extremely bored by its repetition. I like the Quran. At least I like what I've read of it. I mean, you can't argue against the literary value and meaning to the Bible too. This is I would not get rid of this stuff. I'm just saying I don't believe in their God constructs that they make out of it. We says also basically what the Buddha taught about the illusoriness of the physical world. See, I reject the idea that the physical world's an illusion. I think the power elite want us to think so. That's why sim theory is so popular. They want you to throw out all of it, not realize that only their version is fake. See, there's a fake version and the real version. The real meatverse exists. The metaverse is fluid. And the metaverse, under their control, is imposed through consensus onto the real thing. And if you point out the inconsistencies, you're a conspiracy theorist. And I think there's a war on objectivity. The atom bomb destroyed the objective world. And various philosophical constructs like the Mandela effect destroy the physical world. And I'm here to defend, look, all the environmentalists cry all day about Gaia. I'm the only person defending the real world. We're the only ones defending the objective reality as it exists. It's being maligned, twisted, warped, lied about. It's like Play-Doh. It's Play-Doh Earth. It's just clay. They make it into whatever they want it to be. But I think we have to stand firm, and that's why I say off-world stage. The world stage is Normieville. If you're in Truthyville or Woketown, you're deeper in. The only place where you can be described as deprogrammed is outside of their closed system. If your frame of reference does not include psyops, fake news, the sheer fakeability of it all, and an awareness of how fake it is and how news bent it is, then you're not outside of the box. That's why we study these events. For example, the recent immolation of Maxwell Azarello, who was inspired by the previous immolation of, it was Aaron Bushnell, like burning bush. We were looking at this thinking, okay, this looks real. But just because it looks real doesn't mean it is real. Your eyes can fool you. I'm seeing these examples recently of people seeing planes that seem to be levitating. And it's just because they're moving, it's moving, and they're not understanding the illusion. So they're running away with these wild theories about planes just levitating. And I try to explain to them, oh no, it's all perspective and parallax. And they tell me, no, I'm right about this. The plane was frozen in space. Fine, believe that. But it's your ego and your inability to admit that you're wrong that's going to lock you into a false paradigm if that's how you're going to go about things. You have to be willing to admit that you're wrong. So I look at this guy burning. I'm like, wow, that guy burned. That's terrible. That's sad. My eyes lied to me, though, because as I looked into it, the story, like most of these stories, just fell apart. And as we dug into it, we found there's something called Zell gel. There are things called, in stunt terminology, they call these naked burns. There are gels they can put on you and set you on fire for special effects purposes. Everything we see on the news is up for debate as to whether or not it can be faked or not. And if you don't know how something's faked, you don't have to default to it's real. I don't know how they faked it, therefore it's real. I talked to one person, he goes by Boogeyman, and he's like, I don't believe in planes on 9/11 or the Pentagon, but I do believe in the jumpers. I'm like, you don't get to pick and choose. If any part of it's fake, it's all fake. Just rule of thumb. And just because you don't know how they faked the jumpers doesn't mean that they weren't faked. We don't go to magic shows like you're at your kid's birthday party and the clown does a magic trick and pulls a rabbit out of a hat. You don't know how it's done doesn't mean it came from another dimension or that it's real magic. You shouldn't default to magic. You shouldn't default to the supernatural. Not when you have all these elite playing God. They will be happy for you to think that the media is divinely inspired, that it's all just amazing coincidence. And there are coincidences, but there's a difference between meaningful coincidences and just the regular kind. And something else too, another trend that we picked up on, and it's part of what I think is an active measure. We're noticing patterns, accurately discerning patterns. We're recognizing these things. We're describing it accurately. We're coming to a closer understanding, I think, of how predictive programming works. We're getting close to the mark here. It's advertising, it's repetition, it's subliminal, it's forming narratives and scenarios in your mind so you're pre-deciding how you're going to act when this thing occurs. So we're digging deeper into predictive programming, finding how, hey, this is entirely consistent with a massive mind control operation run by government, through media, through politics, and through entertainment. It's very consistent, and that has a lot of explanatory value. But then you have others coming along, and this is very popular on Twitter, and they will find this many days between this event and this event, add to this number, and then you combine it with this word, and you get this number, and before you know it, they have 50 data points to prove that the world ends tomorrow. And they say, hey, look, there's no way that the media is controlled by man because look at all these connections. Well, those are manufactured connections, and it took me a minute to figure out how they were creating the perception that they were accurate. And it's pretty simple now. It's called the Texas sharpshooter fallacy. You take five gematria calculators, you pick 20 random terms or targeted terms, whatever, and you come up with a few matches. Now, since you're not limited by anything, you don't have a set of parameters. You're just like anything that fits goes. You can make anything fit. You could make Nostradamus predict your day if you're vague enough about it. And that's what we're seeing. Vagueness, but also no parameters, no wrong answers. And that matters. And we witnessed this with the Taylor Swift. Okay, I don't know why my this I'm going to switch from Skype likely today. We're missing a lot of calls. Ringer is on. Just got a call by, looks like Isaac Clark. Now I can outbound call if you want me to. Going through some comments. Yeah, for some reason phones aren't working. I'm going to have to replace the phones. Infinite Plane Radio.
Yes, hello. How are you today, sir?
Very good. How are you on this Infinite Plane Saturn day?
I'm doing well, thank you, thank you. I'm just phoning in, just wondering if you'd be willing to share a few of your worldviews with me.
Sure, no problem. Any questions, I will answer.
So I've been dabbling in the flat Earth. I would absolutely appreciate your interpretation of that information.
Okay, well, right off, I reject the biblical model because I don't believe there is a model that you can point to. I reject the globe model, so that doesn't mean that I automatically get to replace it with something that feels better. I think the rejection of the globe model is a rational act of agnosticism. But all we're left with is our perceptions, which is you perceive it as what? Flat and stationary. That's your starting point unless you trust what's on the screen. So for me, it's more about worldview and where you get it, but it's more like the flat earth question, not a flat earth model. And that's why I reject the Bible, because it asserts that the Bible earthers will say we know it to be such. How are you approaching this?
I mean, I've been around the community for quite some time. At one point, I was a plate earther. I firmly believed that the Earth was a stationary plane surface. But things develop over time. You are acquainted with new information, new topics. I'm not entirely sold on the globe model myself, but I do feel like we live in something of a three-dimensional realm.
Right, well, what about this question? Because for me, it comes down to open or closed. The globe is a closed system, scarcity, running out of everything, and it's isolated in the middle of nowhere. So that would be a closed system, which I think corresponds to our worldview. And when I'm asserting that that is fake or likely not 100% true, I'm saying there's more to it. So I try to approach this as an open system, and I'm looking for the boundaries, haven't arrived at them yet. And same thing with how I view the worldview. I'm trying to take this as an open system, off-world stage, and not accepting the globe as presented. So for me, it's a philosophical posture that is breaking away from their assumed parameters and boundaries.
Are you familiar with the concept of Sheol?
That's the real concept of hell or like an underworld. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Yeah, describe it for me though, because that's all I know is really just the definition. It's like the Hebraic concept of hell, but it's not necessarily like. Well, yeah, please describe it.
I mean, there's a few interpretations of it. Like you're explaining, it could potentially be a real world hell, but I think it exists potentially on like another dimension.
Okay. Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, I'm looking at this thing from, of course, the worldview and how we arrive at things. And interestingly enough, I find a lot of explanatory value in this idea described in the tree of life, the Kabbalistic tree of life, where it has this notion of light at the top and then the kingdom at the bottom. And I think we exist on this spectrum where our souls are above and our bodies the densest level, but there may be a step lower. So it's like, for example, hell is described as down. It's like, yeah, it could be a deeper level of disconnection from our source. So like, I'm not really opposed to the idea, but as far as it being a physical place, I don't know.
Well, you mentioned the tree of life, and that's an interesting place to start because if you believe in the ideas of as above, so below, there is the opposite to the tree of life, which is the tree of death or the tree of the Sephiroth, which is the inverted beliefs of the Kabbalic system.
Okay, now that we're on this topic, we look at the solar system where you have the sun in the middle and then the planets revolving around it on a plane. Most people don't know, or it's weird, the people who believe in it aren't generally aware,
Heliocentrism.
yeah, that the solar system's flat. But if you look at the model of it with the sun and the planets around it, I I actually think this. I think that space travel is not only fake, but that it's an analogy for ascending states of consciousness. And I think that if you look at the tree of life with the light on the top and then the kingdom on the bottom and the Sephiroth, these spheres which are associated with the various planets in different ways, you're like, well, could it not be an analogous model? In other words, if space travel is an analogy for ascending states of consciousness, it would perfectly match with the idea of the tree of life, which maps consciousness from the material to the celestial or to the higher realms, earth to heaven. And I think there's something to that in the sense that we're operating in a realm, and the best we can describe it is as something that is a thing that's experienced as we live it as we experience it as a 3D model or whatever, but in reality, I don't think it exists until we experience it. So, like, is it even useful to talk about the Earth and its shape if we can't even determine if the Earth is an object in space? Maybe we are just in the universe itself.
Okay. Um, as far as planets are concerned, what do you think their role in the solar system serves? And do you believe that some of the NASA images that we see, do you believe those to be true, or do you think they're potentially hiding some aspects of our solar system from us?
I don't trust anything coming from so called space because space is fake, which means that whenever we're given descriptions of these things, I take it with for example, there is some consistency, and it still is consistent with the symbolic systems. I think our modern paradigm is a reiteration of something archaic, and so I don't trust anything they give us from above. I think it's all just a replacement heaven, and that's pretty much why I think, for the most part, it's like space travel itself. I think again, it's the elite priesthood. You look at the ISS. What do they do up there? That's our priesthood telling us, look how bad you're treating the earth. God's going to punish you. They're moralizing. It's all about judging man, and we have to become one world so we don't wreck the earth. The idea of the blue marble was to make earth itself an idol that we could worship. So I just look at the whole space program as a religious paradigm. It has nothing to do with science or real observation when it comes from the stuff from above.
Yeah, they truly are. They are esoteric priests from the old world. Have you ever watched the show Raised by Wolves by any chance?
Yeah, Ridley Scott, very good. Another one of these with a female protagonist, who, of course, yeah, Raised by Wolves has
Yes,
a
the
space
ascended
arc.
god, if you will.
Yes, and the arc. It had an arc and a space station falling. Very
Yep.
common theme in Netflix sci-fi.
Yeah, the angelic beings watching over the brood, if you will.
Like the Elohim. Yeah, exactly. The idea of a plurality
Yep.
of gods in the Garden of Eden. And I think that that's the story of the movie The Village, where it's the elders in their little commune. It's the Garden of Eden, and these are the Elohim. And the ones who figure out that it's fake get kicked out. And they find out it's fake by doing what? By going beyond the boundaries to where the red bushes are, the red berries, the bad color. And that's
So,
emblematic of the
to,
apple.
sorry to cut you off. The tree of Sephiroth, what do you think the symbolism in Raised by Wolves is for that?
I'm gonna have to rewatch it because I watched it when it first came out. If you want to remind me, because I binge watched all the sci-fi I could.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'll give you a quick refresher. So like you were saying, one of the surviving members of the spacecraft crash, one of the members of the religious sect, not the atheists, he ends up becoming a quote false prophet, and they crucify him on the tree of Sephiroth after the serpent dies.
Oh, that's right. That's right. And it's they all have the sun, the solar symbol, and it's this
Yes.
religious. Okay. I think I'm gonna have to go back and watch it again. I like Ridley Scott's work, and there were probably some themes I missed. The main one I was picking up on at the time, because I'd watched it adjacent to Wheel of Time, is that it showed a very strong female presence as the dominating leadership role. Like even the 100, another movie with a space arc that crashes, and it's always the female rulers. And I think that's just preparing us predictive programming wise for accepting a female
Yes,
president.
the upcoming matriarchy, the flip between the patriarch and the coming rising of the matriarchy,
Exactly.
as it was in antediluvian times, allegedly.
Well, we have the rise of what? Barbie feminism as, and if you watch the movie Barbie, and I watched it for all of its predictive programming value, it's the Whore of Babylon. The color pink has tremendous significance in the occult, but it's the Barbie becomes a real woman, physically a woman, and then
The
Ken.
story of Pinocchio, and like you're saying, the pink chakra color being your crown, the highest ascension, the level of gnosis,
No,
if you
yep.
will.
Well, that's what she does, and but Ken, however, remains superfluous, basically useless. And the introduction of
Yeah, they really do portray the male role as being a dummy or a servant in that film, don't they? I haven't seen Barbie yet, but I am actually interested in the esoteric value of it.
well, if you want to watch it from that perspective, you have to look at Margot Robbie's previous role in the movie Babylon, which was based on Hollywood
Okay.
Babylon, which was written by Kenneth Anger. Kenneth Anger did a movie with
Uh,
Marjorie Cameron called Inauguration of the Pleasure Dome about the New Age, and she's Babylon in
Very
his
much the
movie.
horror of Babylon, then, in that
But then she
regard.
was also the Whore of Babylon in the Jack Parsons L. Ron Hubbard ritual before that. So what I'm pointing out here is that
Ah, okay.
there's a current here. There are some threads that show that Margot Robbie was chosen for the Barbie role to represent the Whore of Babylon. That was already her archetype, and it connects her and the movie through Kenneth Anger to the sexual revolution, Satanism, and the mainstreaming of Thelema and the Thelemic goddess.
NGL, she got some cute feet, though. I can see why they chose her to be the hoe of Babylon. Know what I'm saying?
Maybe I didn't look. I didn't look. I will say this though.
You
Um,
didn't look at her feet. They did a close up on her feet. What you tell me? You closed your eyes during that part? Come on, dog.
I
You
had
didn't
my
look at them
notebook.
toes
I had my
twinkling.
notebook out and I was taking notes, and I didn't know until after I watched it about how many
Nigga,
of
you
her.
got a notebook when you're watching movies?
You
Shit.
think I'm gonna watch? I'm
Taking
watching.
notes?
I was watching the Barbie movie with the express purpose of why is this movie, and not only that movie. If you paid attention this summer, they merged the two, Barbie and Oppenheimer. You see,
And
Barbieheimer,
Oppenheimer? Barbenheimer?
Barbieheimer.
Borbenheimer?
The significance of this though is,
Yes,
okay, so the nuke.
I'm familiar with the theory.
The nuke
Continue.
was also represented as Godzilla. Godzilla is a metaphor for the atomic bomb. Godzilla is the beast.
Have you seen the new Godzilla movie, though? Don't talk shit before you've seen the new one.
I've seen Godzilla -1, and then I've seen the previous. But no, I didn't see the new one yet. What is it? Godzilla New Empire.
Oh, it was a banger.
Well,
Man,
hey,
that ginger, what is that Ginger Kong doing? What are they trying to
hey, I
tell us about
appreciate the
red-headed
call,
giants?
but we have a couple other people trying to call in. Call back anytime.
Oh, no worries. I appreciate it, IPS. Have a great day. Stay blessed.
Yep, will do. Yeah, Godzilla is